Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business.
Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director at Epic Made. And we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Ruth Newberry of Cream, Ben Burns of The Future, and Ryan Summers of Spilt.
We're forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we're always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is always brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who excel in visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustration that not only captivates your audience, but also drives tangible business results. We specialize in engaging imaginative, pop culture savvy audiences with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
And with us today, we have Mack Garrison. Mack is the co-founder and director of content at Dash Studio, a high-end animation and motion design agency. With over 10 years in the industry, Mack has worked with top brands like JP Morgan, Coinbase, IBM, Cisco, and Lenovo. Outside of work, he enjoys a good coffee, hiking, camping, and exploring nature with his wife, Molly. Welcome, Mack. Pleasure to have you.
And yeah, thanks so much for having me on here, guys. Really looking forward to getting into the nitty-gritty about our industry and all the stuff that comes along with it.
Yeah, man. It's definitely going to be fun. And just for, side content here, definitely we should go hiking or camping or enjoying some nature together at some point, because those are all my favorite things to do outside of staring at these damn screens all the time.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I stare at screens too long, so then when I leave on the weekend, I have to just get outside, be with nature, Yeah, 100%.
Totally, 100%. All right, so before we jump into today's topic, we want our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us how long you've been in your industry and the project you're most proud of so far.
Oh, man, that is such a good question. So I graduated college design at NC State University. Shout out to my Wolfpack family back in 2011. So what's that? 9 plus 4, 13 years. We're all designers, not math arts. But 13 years. But yeah, so I've been in the motion industry since I graduated. And the project that I'm most proud of, and that's such a good question to start off. We did a piece for Riot Games back in 2018 for League of Legends, and It was one of the most badass things that we got to work on. It was such an unrealistic timeline. I think we had 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks for when Riot Games calls you. It's not like you're saying no to that project.
No.
Right. But yeah, what was so cool about it is, as designers and creatives, we talk so much about what constitutes a dream client. And I've always been a huge advocate that there's not necessarily dream clients, but dream relationships where people really trust one another. And you had to have that in this tight timeline. Their whole team really just opened the door for us, trusting what our thoughts were. We were trying to move things along. They gave us guidelines to help get to a place that they were happy with, but they really let us run free with that creative. So I think that 2018 League of Legends College Championship piece that's up on our website is probably my favorite, but that's so hard to choose, right? You're asking me to choose my favorite project over 9 years of creativity, so I'll give you that one now.
Hey, sometimes it's just the one that pops to your mind first, right? So that's
right.
But that sounds like a great one. Super cool, man. Ross and I are both lifelong overzealous gamers, if you will. So we spent a lot of time gaming and working in the gaming industry as well. So on.
Yeah, we just finished up a trailer for an indie game.
Yep.
Oh, nice. Super fun. Yeah, the gaming space, it's so funny because if I'm being truthful and share a little bit of honesty, I have not been the biggest gamer. And so just learning the slang and diction and vocabulary that kind of comes along with it, I was definitely having to lean on some of my younger Gen Z staff to kind of educate me a little bit on on some of the terminology to kind of get me up to speed. But I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. No, hey, I get it, man. I was funny for me watching the industries evolve. And so I grew up literally crazy deep into MMORPGs where pre Warcraft, World of Warcraft, right? on dial-up modem. So all this like text slang, like LOL and Uber and like all these little BRBs and AFK, all that came from this, like gaming industry. And now like everybody uses all these same kind of acronyms and slang because everyone's texting. But this was like pre-cell phones, so
gosh.
It's pretty interesting. I don't know.
Well,
Anyway.
I'm not a total prude. I will say that I spent hours upon hours playing the OG StarCraft when it came out. Like I was a StarCraft 10. Absolutely, 100%.
Actually, StarCraft 2 back up not too long ago, just because I hadn't played it in forever. It's still a great game. I think it's free now. You can just download and play it. But
no way. That's interesting. I'm going to date myself here. I was like cleaning up. My wife and I, we just bought a house and moved and packing up things, and I found my old original StarCraft disc, CD-ROM. I was like, nice. Oh my gosh,
Yeah, I think I still have my old World of Warcraft stuff.
I
can't play MMOs anymore though. They just eat up too much time.
Totally. Like I have a problem with that. But just because I didn't mean to do this and it's right here. Got my OG Warcraft 2 book. And
let's go. Let's go.
Nice.
I love it.
Like literally right here at my desk.
I love it. Look, this is just proof that you should just hang on to everything, right?
Yeah.
Just hang on to it all.
I could probably sell those. Like I still got boxes and everything. Anyways, all right.
My mom runs an eBay store and sells all that stuff. She gets tons of money for it.
I love it.
My gosh,
I love it.
So the actual topic for the podcast today is basically just kind of discussing the future of motion design in that industry. We're both very much sort of locked in on, we're both very engrossed in that industry, if not like frame by frame animation, then motion design on our end or illustration. And so just kind of the idea of maybe where it's going, what's been going on, why the industry has been so difficult to make money in currently. And just kind of generalized chat about the creative industry and
that's a good question. I think to talk a little bit about where we're heading, I think it's important to look over the last 10 years and just see what's changed so much about it. I remember when I graduated college, I had only taken one motion graphic course, and even at that time my professor barely knew what motion graphics was anyway. Like I had never even heard the term. And so
I'm not sure
the folks who were yeah, right. 100%.
I think motion graphics kind of started to dawn when After Effects and DaVinci became more prevalent and easier to use.
Yeah.
But before that, it was like you learn Maya, like 3D animation, or you learn graphic design in Illustrator, or you learn drawing and digital painting in Photoshop.
Yeah, 100%. And like for me, as someone who was like really a multi-tool creative, multidisciplinary designer. That's the word I'm looking for. Someone who was a multidisciplinary designer, loved illustration, design, loved to video edit. To me, those early days of motion design was so fun because it felt like the Wild West. There wasn't a clear path. It was really ambiguous and open. And honestly, I think that's why folks in the early days of our industry were finding so much success, is because there wasn't enough people who even knew how to do this stuff, right? So when I graduated school and ended up at this agency, I mean, they were just smitten that they had found someone that even really knew how to wield After Effects, create these creative graphics. And so in Raleigh, North Carolina, where my studio is based, as you can imagine, there's not a ton of motion designers at that point when I was graduating. So I got work at this agency and was really lucky to work with this team of people who were really creative. And we were like the answer here in the Southeast for a lot of that work. And as time has changed and more people have gotten into the field, and honestly, I think it's become more saturated than it ever has before, what happened is that it's transitioned from like no one knows what this is or how to do it to now that there's a lot of people in it and there's a lot of people who know how to do it, and it's almost inadvertently sort of devalued it a little bit, I think, just because there's so many folks in here. It's commodity, right? It's made it a commodity. So you look at that and that can be a downer, and then you accent that with a lot of the new tech that has come out, right? There's conversations about AI, and as creators you're seeing things like Sora and these pieces come out and we're like, wow, that's not too far off from what I'm doing. And I think it's easy to be pessimistic about where we are in this industry. The thing for me that makes me an eternal optimist is that designers themselves are problem solvers. That people are hiring, right? They have a problem. They're not sure how to go about it. And so we're applying that problem solving to the craft that we have. But that's why I also think motion designers are in the best position of all designers as we head to the future, because everyone who's come into this space has come in typically from learning some other tool or element first. Like they're an illustrator who came to the space to learn motion design, or they're a coder who came into it, or they're a graphic designer. They're naturally used to learning all these different tools and approaches. And so as we think about the future, storytelling is not going to change. The human side of having some connection for someone to lead you through this project is not going to change. The medium might shift a little bit in what that is, but storytelling is always going to be there. And that's why I think motion designers are going to be well set up for a future that is filled with change, because we've been navigating it the whole time as we've been trying to define our own industry.
Yeah, that's 100%. We say this a lot too when Ross and I talk about it. The tools evolve. These positions and these titles weren't even like, I started my company in 2006, right? Like there was definitely nothing called a motion designer at the time, right? Like, but it's interesting because as it all evolves, it really becomes more and more and more, like you said, it's about the story, about the strategy, the ideas, and how to like connect with people on a human level. The tools are always going to evolve, and in fact, they're going to get easier and easier and easier. So, that like when AI first started hitting, it really pissed Ross off because he's like, I used to be a fucking wizard, like, and now like it's like Joe Schmo can type some words in there and get really close to what it took like my whole life to do, right? And unfortunately, that's the nature of the beast. But like, as these things are evolving, like I spent all day yesterday, like downloading new software, understanding some of these. I finally started trying to build my own LoRa models, like localized reference. I don't know what the hell it stands for, but basically like it's a database of just work that's I created, or in this case, I was using some of my dad's work. And now I've got it today where it's generating new paintings that look like my father's work, like keeping his like almost his creative essence alive a little bit, right? Through prompt generation and creating this specialized database feels really good and weird and crazy. And seeing how like I've researched on a bunch of workflows on how to add animation and motion to these things, which is interesting, right? To see how this is going to evolve, because we owe it to ourselves to stay on the forefront of that, because otherwise, we can ride on the fumes for years or maybe less than that, but eventually we're going to get our legs cut out from under us if we don't understand the latest and greatest best technology.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. It's like when Adobe came out with like, subscription as a service for, After Effects and Photoshop, Illustrator, it made it more accessible for so many people, and so as a result, that's great because more people are educated, more people can get in, they can play around with stuff. There was old school graphic designers who said, oh, this is going to ruin our field, but it was a new tool that came out, and I feel like that's what we're just trying to navigate right now. To me, I look at AI, and I do want to state this first. I'm a business owner. And so when I think about new tools and innovation, that can be exciting because I think there's like what that could mean for our studio as a whole. But I totally am sympathetic with the creator, right? Because if you are a creator, you are creating every day, then yes, this is absolutely scary because there's all this change that's happening. So I do want to say that first. But I also think that, the stuff that's going to be taken up, it's like if I don't have to go look for stock footage anymore, that's great. If I can type, AI site, generate stock footage for me to use, it's what you do with that and what you build off of it. And that's the tinkering and the thinking, and why I think it's so critical that even if you don't personally want to adopt some of this stuff, you're at least thinking about it and playing around with it so it doesn't feel as foreign. I know for us, we don't use it a ton in our studio, but we have played around with like elemental process pieces of it. Like let's say, for example, you've got you're working on a collage type piece and client's giving you this photo and it's super low res, using AI to up res that or to fill in a background. And now you can use the photo and move forward. I mean, little things like that are amazing. Or like, let's think about, we've all had that client with a really technical subject matter. You're like, damn, how do I explain this to somebody, and you type in like, hey, give me a metaphor for XYZ, and you get 10 metaphors, and they might all be trash, but one of them makes you think about something a little bit differently. It's like, oh, okay. That to me is like the benefit of AI. That's the stuff that like I'm excited about. The stuff that scares me, the stuff I don't like, comes back to people's rights and having their work appropriated. I mean, no one's sitting here saying like that's a good thing. That's super shitty.
Yeah, there's a massive ethical argument to be had about AI, and that likely isn't going to destroy the industry regardless of how it pans out, right? Like, no matter how that ultimately gets resolved, if it ever gets resolved, isn't going to damage it enough that it's going to go away. So we can assume that it's going to stay here forever, at least, and move forward from here probably. And the way that I kind of see it, it's not, you brought up graphic designers, and I honestly think that almost all art fields are kind of going through a similar transformation that graphic design kind of went through, where it became so accessible and simultaneously so necessary with the way that we like present ourselves through social media and websites and things like that. It became such an everyday need, and coupled with a sort of easy to access tool, that you have a flood of graphic designers who are all capable of using the program, but there's still differentiators in between in that pool, right? Like there are still designers who you want to work with and designers who you may not want to work with. And so I think that's always going to be the case, even with click a button and a video appears or an image appears or whatever. Like you said, ultimately it ends up being what you do with it. I've never had an instance of AI give me exactly what I want. It's always been a level of inspiration required, or inspiration that requires creativity on top of that. And I think that we're getting into so much saturation. We've talked about this a couple times on the podcast. We're getting into so much saturation of media, whether that's through Netflix or social media or whatever, that people have started to become tone deaf to it all. And they're starting to be significantly more discerning about where their time goes. We talk about like people's attention spans being garbage, but I think it's more of an increased discernment of where you're going to put your attention, because there's so much stuff to digest that you just can't afford to do it all.
100%. I also think it's why you've seen such a rise in UGC, user-generated content, is because it's that authenticity. Like, people are so suspect of so many things, trying to sell them stuff or whatever, that they're looking for that authenticity. So I think, like, as animators, one thing we've been doing at Dash is trying to figure out how does animation fit into that space. We think of user-generated content, and you think of the TikTok selfie or someone talking to camera, and that's all accurate. But how does animation play into that? It's something we've been asking, because it's what brands are asking for. It's why we've seen a big rise, I believe, in more interview-style content, where you are accenting someone talking to camera with elemental visuals, or even just raw, rough audio from like a audio recording that you're creating animation to, because it just makes it feel a little bit more authentic. Because I think, like, to your point, it's like there's so much stuff, there's content saturation that people are kind of getting weathered from it, which also makes it a little bit tougher to stand out from the crowd now. And there seems like there's so many things you've got to learn. I used to believe that as we look towards the future, that actually being in the middle was a great spot. And what I mean by that is that you used to traditionally have these agency of records, right? Client would hire agency of record. They'd handle all the creative work. That's where it all was going. Well, over the last 10 years, a lot of these in-house brands started developing their own teams. So now they're like, you know what? We don't need an agency of record. We need the boutique motion studio, or this unique branding studio, or here's a graphic design shop we can hire. So I think you saw this rise of studios. Well, what's interesting to me is that now we're starting to see those same brands reach out to us and say, well, could you actually do this graphic design project for us? Or could you do this other thing? It's like they love the boutique nature of what you can do, but they want you to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think what's going to end up happening, and what I'm really excited about, is more collaboration in our industry than there's ever been before. Because like I think about the fact that we recently had a project where we teamed up with a branding studio who handled the brand for this company. And then we worked with them to bring that to life for this big event that they have, right? So this is two studios we wouldn't normally work together, but we teamed up for this one big project. And then we kind of went back our separate ways. And it was amazing. The client, there was no like white labeling. The client knew that we were both in on it at the same time. We were both there. We both came in with our specialty. And then when there were smaller projects, we would just handle that promotion. If there was bigger branding projects, they would handle that. That to me is what I start to get excited about. Again, thinking about the future. I think there's more opportunity for cross-studio collaboration to be able to compete with some of these bigger shops. I think there's opportunity for freelancers, for cross-freelance collaboration to say like, hey, you know, let's just put in a bid for this project between the three of us. We don't necessarily have to be a studio. So I think that flexibility and being able to scale quickly and without losing fidelity is a really important thing that a lot of brands are looking for. And if you can do that with studio to studio or freelancer to freelancer, I think that's an exciting part of the future as well.
We've seen a lot of that as well, where, you know, I mean, probably half our clients are other agencies that bring us in. And I can't remember the last time we were asked to white label by, I mean, there's some like agency owners that are like, let's call them like an older generation that still like are adamant about this white labeling thing. But like the other ones that are like, no, these are the specialists. You want them here. Like they really know their shit. And it's a value add as opposed to like, oh no, we're not good at this. Well, every single thing, we're not the best. Like no one believes that anymore, right? But as you know, us millennials are starting to become more and more of the market share of owners and people in the space, like we have a really high radar for just bullshit, right? Like, and that's why we see more authentic content being demanded on the marketplace, because like you're not gonna sell us with some like old like boomery like sales tactics. Like it just feels like slimy and disingenuous, right? Like all this stuff from the previous generations that just was just like real hype, like fake crap. Like none of us like it anymore, and we're exposed to so much content. That's why you see the rise in authenticity on the content side, but also on the like, hey, we're not pretending like we don't have freelancers or we're not partnering with other agencies. Like we went out and handpicked the best company to do the thing we know you need you to do, and this is them, and here's, you know, here's Carl, or here's Mac, or here's Ross. I'm like, right, they know their shit. Trust them, we trust them, you should trust them. And that's when the magic happens that I've seen, at least. So.
I love it. And also I think it's like affecting other things within a studio or even individual freelancers, other priorities that they have, you know, like, so there's the creative, we talk about like the community side of it and connecting with other people to make a stronger product. Take something like sales. I know this is something that so many freelancers and studios struggle with. Like, how do we get our business development pipeline going? How are we winning work? After doing this almost exclusively now for 2 years, you know, my role has shifted from creative director, or actually animator in the early days. When we first started, I was animating everything. My business partner, Corey, and I had some late nights in there. But, yeah, you know, I did that, did creative direction, went to producing for a bit. And my role in the company now as director of content is to try to oversee some of our new business development, trying to find the right partnerships. And what I found is that I'm just so inundated with emails and outbound stuff and just kind of garbage of like, hey, let me sell you this thing, or you should buy this software or whatever. I get it all the time. And so does everyone else. And so if you're trying to do new business and you're exclusively depending on a digital space and just trying to reach out through LinkedIn or reach out through emails, I guarantee you it's going through the trash. The stuff that's working these days is going to events, it's meeting people in person. Big projects are getting won over text messages because they know the other person on the other side. And so it's so funny to me because it started off with like a handshake for a business deal.
It started off
going to circle. Yeah, and then it's like, oh, we got these emails. Oh, cool. I don't have to be in person. I can just send emails on stuff. And then it's LinkedIn. It's like, gosh, there's a lot of digital stuff out there. I need to get back to person to like just meet people and get them to know who I am. And I think that again goes back to that like community and collaboration side. It's like you got to put yourself out there. You got to be a human. You got to be authentic, so people know who you are and they're buying into your company.
And also the rise of AI has started to create, I think, an ick in people where they just, I think that people subconsciously know it's coming, where they're not going to be able to discern whether or not they're talking to a real person on the internet. And I think that I don't think it's a conscious effort, but I think that just in general, we hear so often that something might be fake that we don't want to take the chance when we're dealing with money anymore. right? You want to know that the person that you're giving your money to has not only the skill set, but they're an authentic human being that you actually want to work with. I mean, you see it even at this point, like on Fiverr and stuff. People are charging, $200 to generate an AI image for someone, and if you don't know the difference, then you're kind of wasting your money, sort of. And just knowing that, like, meeting these people in person and like having an idea of what their process actually looks like and being able to talk to them, I think is becoming a much more valuable asset nowadays.
If I had to ask you, Ross or Carl, how Epic Made gets most of their clients, if I guess, I bet it's referrals, right? I bet most people are coming in, most of your work comes in through someone saying, hey, you should go work with these guys. They do great work, right?
Yep. We actually,
Carl screaming into the ether, one of the two.
we produce a lot of content, right? And it's a lot of like social validation. We have this podcast. I do a live stream every Wednesday night. I'm always posting. I'm trying to be everywhere on the internet that I can be. As the face of the business, no one really wants to like go to Epic Made's page. So we don't spend hardly any time on our company pages. It's all through me, through like this brand building. And it's funny because like Ross and the rest of the team sort of talk about me like I'm some sort of disease that you catch it and you can't get rid of. Like, it's like, because I genuinely love people and I network all the time. And you're absolutely right. Like the best deals that we ever get and the best relationships we work are just me going out to conventions and meeting people, me going up to things. I mean, what you do with Dash Bash, I'm sure drives a lot of awareness and revenue, and that's huge, and that's been on my short list to go to as well. We like, it was so funny. I made this piece in 2020, right? Like we were getting ready to ramp up and like really crush the convention space. So like I was like ready to go. I had this whole plan. COVID hits. Boom, the whole thing falls out. And then I didn't go to any in-person stuff for like 2 or 3 years. And we kind of had this whole weird journey. I mean, everyone had a weird journey through that, but it was fun. I made a tribute piece to that. That's on my page at Colorful Carl. It's just like, it's a me on the couch and me on the couch next to myself, but one's like January me and December me. It's like, it's so ridiculous looking. You should check it out.
God. It's so accurate though. It's like I use milestones in my life to think back on time and what was happening and why it's so hard for me to think back to 2020 because it was like I didn't do anything, and so like trying to ground myself with different events was a challenge. But yeah, building up what we were talking about with the community. So earlier this year, I gave a presentation at Off Barcelona, and it was on the value of community. And so I was really curious about this, because I'm a big advocate for getting out there, like you said, Carl, meeting people, and that authenticity matters. And that's what people are really buying into. There's a certain quality spectrum that you have to hit to be able to do the work, but people are going to hire you because they think you're a great person and they want to work with you. Right. So I keep saying that, but, there's, I'm sure, a lot of business folks out there that are being like, oh, yeah, is there really a monetary value to that? What does that look like? And so I went through and audited every project we'd ever done at Dash over the last 9 years to look how that project came in, how we got it, what was it for. And I'm sure this data won't surprise you. 84% of projects, every project we've ever done at Dash, came from someone who referred us, recommended us. There was some sort of connection there. If you look at our top 10 clients who spent the most money with us ever at Dash, the number one client came to the Dash Bash as a freelancer, was working with this client, and the client was saying like, hey, we need to ramp up our work. Who would you recommend we reach out to for a studio? Oh, you should go to Dash Bash. They're doing a lot of community-driven events. They're really cool folks. Go work with them. That was like how we got our number one client. The number two client was a competitor, quote unquote competitor in our space, who said, this isn't quite the right fit for us. Dash would be the right fit. You should reach out to them. That's our number two client. And the third one are peers of mine that I worked with in the early days when I first got out of school, who you're just good. You just take care of, you support, you're just out there helping. If you go about this industry and you're just genuine and you try to help people with no ulterior motive, just trying to share your information, trying to support them, they will give back to you 100%. And I think that's what the data from this research shows, and why I'm always going to be such a huge advocate for just doing good things just because you should.
Dude, preaching to the choir over here. Literally exactly how we run the business. I never had any effective marketing strategies or campaigns that like generated some magical, like we've got maybe 2 clients I can think of that came from like, hey, our cold email outreach or like some of these things, But yeah, definitely, as you were talking, I was like, yep. Like the top 3 or 4 clients that just came to mind as you were talking, same exact things. I mean, we crushed this video for one of our clients, like way under budget because we really loved it. And like, it was one of those things like everything else is there. The budget's sort of like half of what we'd really want, but like, it's going to feel good to crush this. We blew it away. That went really well. That person left that position as the marketing director there, got brought onto another spot and brought us one of the biggest projects we've ever had, right? So we went from like this like tiny little project that like reasonably we should have said no to for the budget, right? But I made the space for it, it worked out. And then, not even a year later, we're getting one of the biggest projects we've ever gotten through that same relationship because that person moved on because we just took care of them. And now that's reciprocal, right? It's like that karmic order, right? Like that's how this should work. So, yeah.
Well, let me pose this question to you all. And I feel like I know what you would say. I mean, take 2 candidates who maybe are freelancers that want to work with Epic Made, right? Mm-hmm. One of them is really good, like maybe the best freelancer that you've ever seen. You're like, holy cow, I can't believe how great this works.
I already know where this is going.
Same.
But they're like an asshole. They're an asshole to work with. They get friction. They're difficult. They complain about all the feedback. They say this looks good. Then you have another candidate who's good. Maybe they're not the best out there, but they're good. But damn, are they not the nicest people in the world? They're always trying to help out. They're asking where they can chip in and do other things. Who are you hiring for that project?
Every time it's the second person, right?
Every time.
We tried that. I had that experience. Ross and I are picturing the exact same face in our mind right now. We hired this person, and they probably had one of the most impressive portfolios I've ever seen coming straight out of school. Person was an absolute beast and could take zero feedback, took terrible direction, horrible to interact with. Like, if I said anything that wasn't positive, it was like I walked up and poked him in the eyeball just to be a dick. And it was like, no, dude, like this is not going to work. So that was an absolute struggle. And I think the leadership a great leader and great leadership team can take that second candidate who's good, but has all the right attitude and the right ideas and the right, like, hey, I'm here to get better, right? No one on my team, Ross included, even probably has the biggest ego out of everybody. Love you, Ross. Doesn't think he knows everything and that there's not still massive room for improvement on everything, right? So, because we're always trying to grow and evolve. So, Ross can take that person and make them amazing. And then good leadership can do that, right? So,
and I'm constantly learning. Like I'm actually working on creating a storytelling sort of Bible right now. It's just a compilation of all the stuff that I needed. I ultimately need to write down so that I don't forget it. It's one of those things that when you have someone who wants to learn and get feedback, that we actually just brought on someone full time. Because of their ease of, like, they're extremely skilled, but mostly because every time I ask them to do something, I don't think they've ever said that it would be a problem, like whether it would be a problem for them or not. Realistically, they've always wanted to learn a new thing. They've always wanted to take on a new challenge, and they've always done it with a smile on their face, and it's immensely more valuable and stress relieving from an administrative side of things to work with that person than someone who I know is going to kind of knock it out of the park from a skill standpoint, but they bitch about it the whole time.
Yeah.
And
100%.
And like another thing to piggyback off of that is something that I think is absolutely rotten in our industry, is the ability to communicate like a professional. Whereas, like, you don't necessarily have to be an asshole to lose a job. You could also not know how to write an email, not know how to get your work done on time. The dog ate my homework excuses pile up. There's been plenty of artists that we've had that, unfortunately, we just can't afford to work with anymore because I don't know if it's God or the universe or whatever just doesn't like them very much, right? And they just every project gets delayed or fails because of a dog ate my homework situation, right? Like I just can't reasonably work around that. Or I email them and say, or message them in Slack or something and say, hey, let me know how this project is going. Let me know how this project is going. Like, give me an update on this project. And then they messaged me back 2 days before the project is done. It's like, oh, I had a death in the family or whatever. It's like, yeah, and I get that. That's fine. But tell me, right? Like, I need to know when it happens, not when you get back.
Oh my gosh, communication.
Yeah.
I think if you look at every problem, every creative has ever navigated, you could probably distill it down to the fact that there was bad communication somewhere, right?
100%.
And to voice an opinion for all the producers out there who may be listening, it's like producers are trying to help. They're trying to help you get this done. If you're in a bad place or you feel like you're worried, raise your hand as soon as possible, right? So that they can help. Check in with your art director. Give them an update in the morning on what you're working on. Give them an update at the end of the day on where you are. Just setting expectations. And the same thing happens with clients, And I think it's one of the things that is a little bit of a lost art. It takes some time to kind of figure out how to communicate, being succinct, not writing too much, not writing unnecessary things. I mean, all that stuff is learning lessons. I'll share a funny story that I don't know if I've told publicly, but this will just hopefully make people feel better that they all kind of navigate this at some point. It was like our first year as a studio, and we had this project that came in for a bid. I still can't believe I did this. So the project came in for a bid, and it was a tricky project where, you're thinking in your head like, well, if there are these things we're running into, it can be a little bit more expensive, or, I mean, I guess we could do it for this way, or if I really wanted to do bare bones, I could do it this way. And so I have an email and I'm typing it out, and I'm typing out all three directions on what this could cost or what it could be to kind of workshop it. Take a break, go to lunch, come back, open up my computer to an email response from the client, and it's just a question mark. And I looked, and I had accidentally sent the email where I had quoted out three different directions at three different prices. I was so embarrassed. I wrote back, and all you can do at that point is just be honest and just transparent. I said, look, I was like, this is a tricky project to quote out. I was workshopping on which direction it is. I was intending to send this one ultimately, blah, blah. And honestly, she was really understanding of it. But, that taught me the lesson of making sure that I never have never have the intended recipient filled in as I'm writing the email. Right, then add it in, But it's these little communication tricks. You're like, okay, you do an error one time, you make that mistake, you're never going to do it again.
Dude, so early on in the business, before I brought Ross on, actually, it was me and my founding business partner who he did all the development work, and I did all the graphic design and web design and all. And this is 2007, right?
And this is the drunk story.
No, I was sober. I replied all so the client sent back another. He was just being really OCD about some particular part on his webpage, and I was so sick of dealing with it. I'm super green at the time, so I just hit reply. And I'm forwarding it to Justin, who was my business partner. And I'm like, look, Greg's being a dick again, blah, blah, blah. And then I sent it to the client.
Oh my gosh, that's so bad.
I never get embarrassed, right? But I don't know, there's something wrong with me. I literally don't get embarrassed. But then this moment, I had this moment of panic. I was like, oh no, he still owes us money. I could have, but he just replied, he's like, Carl, I'm not trying to be a dick. I just blah, blah, but it totally went the wrong, in my favor, which is just a crapshoot at that point, right? I could have really pissed him off. But I then, resounded to no matter what, I'm not going to put these intrusive thoughts into writing, especially no matter who knows where this could end up or who someone could see it. So I was like, all right, I learned that lesson then early. It didn't cost me any money or anything, but it could have been bad. Could have been bad. So anyways, we're covering that account.
That. We had, I love this story, Sachin, because there's some good ones in here. Another time we were up in Manhattan for this big pitch with this client, and, we were pretty nervous for it. So it was the early days of Dash. And so we really wanted the job. And we're in this classic, high-rise building, boardroom style thing. And, we have the presentation set up. It was me and my business partner were sitting there. And we get into the presentation, and I can tell that my voice is getting a little hoarse, right? And so I go to drink my glass of water, and it's an empty glass, but I guess I was just nervous, so I just drink an empty glass, And I go, and then what I should have done is just not said anything and just continued on. But instead, I was like, oh, there's nothing in here. And my business partner tried to be suave, he slides me. He's like, you can have mine, and he slid me over his glass of water. And I didn't know if that would be weird to drink his water in front of all these people. So I just set it down and kept going with the presentation. And so we finished and we go through and we're like walking out afterwards. And we're both kind of quiet. We're like, did we just totally bomb that because of that water situation? And Corey's like, I don't know. That was pretty awkward. But, you know, at the end of the day, we ended up winning the project. And part of me wonders if it was a very human experience. Like, of course we're nervous. We're a small shop coming up there. They knew we were a small shop, right? And I'm sure they could tell that we were a little nervous. But there's something about, like, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, some of that authenticity and just being transparent who you are. Like, you don't have to have it together all the time. You don't have to have it always buttoned up. As long as you're trying, you're putting your best foot forward, that's what matters, right? And it just comes across and echoes like who you are. And so, do we win the job because of that glass water thing? No, probably not. That probably had nothing to do with it. They probably didn't even think about it. We were mentalizing it way more than we should have. But, you know, it's like as motion designers, there's so much on our plate already. We're always doing so many things. We should be kinder to ourselves and more forgiving about some of these errors that we're making, you know? So,
yeah. The dialogues are terrible sometimes. That's, yeah.
At the end of the day, as well, like, as we've let's say, like, Carl and I do a lot of business development for Epic Made in a bubble to some degree, right? Where we're kind of working through how we think we should be as a studio, and Carl and I are both vehement perfectionists, and so, like, I might even do worse than he is, and he'll ask me to move a piece of text 2 pixels to the left because it's the visual weight is bothering him. And so, I mean, that's kind of where the name of the podcast came from, right? It's pixel retentive, like anal retentive. So I digress. When we're working on the business internally, we're really hard on what we're doing well and what we're not doing well, right? And in the beginning, it felt necessary because it felt like we were so small, regardless of how much work we had done in the past. Like Carl said, he's been open since 2006, and I've been with him for the past since 2013 for the past 11 years. And despite the fact that we've been around for a while, the burn has been slow. And so we've always been really hard about trying to figure out what we need to do to get to the next level. And the more levels we jump onto, you know, I feel like we're at a very good spot right now from, like, a reputation standpoint. The more I've started to realize that nobody has their shit together, like, at all, ever. Like, it doesn't. If anything, we actually have our shit together more than most of the people that are making more money than us. Like, it almost isn't correlated at this point. Like, and it's just funny how much we thought it mattered. But I think what really, at the end of the day, matters is being able to, like you said, being able to problem solve, being able to assess where you are, what you need to do to get out of this situation or to the next situation or what have you, and assess it like any human might, not a machine.
Mm-hmm.
And just give yourself some grace and figure out, like, okay, well, you know, and understand that you can't, like, change shit that's already happened.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Learn from it and, like, learn from it, move forward, and make adjustments, you know. To quote a book from Brene Brown, you know, for anyone who's trying to do that personal therapy in their lives, you know, you're in the arena, you're showing up, right? It's easy to cast out or throw shade from the stands, but you're out there, you're showing up, you're making the best decision you can with the information you have at that time. And maybe you learn later on that you should have done something a little bit differently, but you learn from it and you don't do that again. You make those changes forward 100%. And going back to, hey, you were talking earlier about the employee that y'all had and their ability to just kind of be game for anything. You know, Ross, I think you mentioned that, like, there was never an issue. Any project or problem you threw their way, they were like, sure, give it to me. I'm game to go. It's that ability to navigate ambiguity that I think is so important. You know, we get hired as designers and the default is like, oh, we make great work. That's why they're hired. The reality is you make great work based on your ability to navigate a problem and navigate that ambiguity and giving clarity to something that doesn't have clarity. And those are the people that are going to last in our industry. if you can come to any client, take something where they're unsure about how to get to this deliverable, how to make it happen, you can distill that down into the step-by-step process for them, you're an invaluable person. They're always going to have you around. And that's how you're future-proofing yourself as a creative, is to be able to navigate that.
What's funny, have you ever heard of Price's Law?
No, I don't think so. What's Price's Law?
So it's a concept for like labor force and work ethic, where it states that in any sort of team environment, any sort of collaborative environment, 50% of the total work accomplished is accomplished by the square root of the number of participants. So that basically means that in a group of two, you end up with 50% of the work, both sides, right? Because it's easy to identify when someone's not doing their work, right? But in a group of 1,000, 50% of the work is done by 10 people, right? And so this means that it's mediocrity basically scales exponentially and excellence scales linearly. It's the idea that like you really don't have to change a whole lot to be about yourself and about the way that you do things to be ahead of millions and millions of people. Like if you think about the context of the whole of the United States, like 400 million people, right? There's only 4,000 people in that whole pool, according to this law, that are worth like their salt, because everybody else is just living their lives day to day. They're not trying to be great. And so you're not competing with that many people, and it doesn't take much adjustment or pushing. You don't have to like kill yourself to push above a line where most people are sitting below.
That's so interesting. Yeah. Well, and it goes back to something that I really hold in high regard, of this quote that perfection inhibits progress. Yeah. I think where creatives really stumble is that, we are perfectionists. We want to make things look as the best it can possibly be. But when that inhibits you from moving forward or pushing out a new idea or trying something new, that's when it becomes really detrimental. And it's something that I've learned in running the company, that if there's an idea, we want to try it, let's put it out there. We'll see how people respond to it. If it's not there, we'll try something new, but you just keep evolving, you keep iterating and trying. You can't hold something in such high regard. Because look, this day and age, with social media, everyone's going to be a critic, right? No matter how much you think about something, how much time and energy, it's never going to be perfect in their eyes. So just get it out there. Just push it out there and move your company, move your freelance business forward. 100%.
That's it. This, piggybacking on both of what you guys just said, Ross and I talk about this all the time. I've been really pushing like, hey, we're launching anything for Epic Made at 80%. Like if it's 80% where we want it, let's iterate from there. Let's test the market. Like let's not, because like what we're also saying, our 80% is above and beyond almost everybody else, right? Like just by nature, because of the way we work and the way we push. Quick little fact check though, the square root of 1,000 is about 31. But anyways, I just pulled that up on the, I don't know how square root works. Well, that goes back to Mac. Like, we're maybe not mathematicians here. But that's at least according to Google. Who knows? Anyways, and I wanted to say, like, on this, piggyback on this whole conversation, like, I follow MMA, love MMA, and whether or not you love Conor McGregor.
10,000.
Yep.
I meant 10,000.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Read it 10,000 is 100.
Perfect. All right. So, whether or not, like, however you feel about Conor McGregor in the MMA space, like, Dana White said, look, Conor McGregor is amazing. So to your point, Mac, like, there's a lot of us with great skills that come to the table. Conor McGregor, though, Dana said he could call him anytime at any place, and Conor would say, yeah, I'm down to fight. Who is it? Conor would agree to the fight before he even knew who the fuck he was fighting, right? Because he was in it. Like, that's the thing, right? When you have that sort of mindset and you have somebody that's like got your back, that understands the mission, like, I'm doing the thing, you need it, we got it, let's go, right? That mentality takes you so far, especially if you have skills, right? Like, so there's a whole thing there that I think this is really impressive, because you've seen someone like, if you followed MMA over the past decade, Conor McGregor went from obscurity to like the biggest name in fighting and making millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then build an entire whiskey brand and all that, all on his just like, I'm going to show up and do the thing I do best at any time, at any place, no questions asked, right? Like, so it's that mindset that really, really drives things, right? And then obviously he's a fucking great fighter objectively. So like, that also makes the synergy, right? Like,
that might be my one exception. I might want to perfect my fighting skills before I got in the ring with anybody. Might be the one area I'm like, well, maybe perfection there makes a little more sense.
Just bring a brick or a chair or something. You'll be fine.
Well, look, the guy lived, all he did was train to fight, right? He was always ready. Like, that was his mindset. So I think he did have that, Mac, which is what allowed him to have the, mindset of, I'm ready to go at any time. Like, I'll fight anybody, right? So.
No, the mindset's good. I literally meant for me. Like, if I was going in a ring, that might be the only thing I need.
I'm saying I'm bringing a chair or a brick or something. But we are as we're devolving from the original to the conversation, we are coming up on time. So before we wrap, we do have one last question for you, Mac. Same question we ask all of our guests. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience that kind of goes beyond the scope of this call? Something that maybe they might want to look up, a mentor, a resource, a favorite client, something that they might find valuable?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like adjacent to some of the stuff we're talking about. We hit on a lot of conversation around community connection and support and those human interactions and how important that is for your professional growth, as well as the support, just having people cheer you on. It's why we're big believers in attending conferences and really encourage you all the listeners, to get out in there and go connect with other people. We're throwing our Dash Bash, our biennial animation and motion design festival that happens in Raleigh, North Carolina. We'll be here June 11th through 13th in 2025. And to me, what I really love about this conference is that, yes, it is a motion design conference. Yes, there's going to be some really cool work and conversations happening. But I think what's most important is the community that shows up is really welcoming, it's really inclusive, and it's going to be an easy opportunity for you to make some really great friends and meet some really great people. So whether it's the Bash, which if you want to learn more is www.bash.net, learn more about that, or it's another conference, I would encourage anyone out there listening to this to go put yourself out there. Right? We talked a little bit about, perfection inhibits progress. Even if you think of yourself as an introvert, go out there, force yourself to say, I'm going to have 2 conversations today. Just get out there and do it. You will not be disappointed, because this motion community that we have is really a great group.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was already planning on coming, so I just put it in my calendar. So, I'm going to be there. And if you need some, I love to speak. I've got a couple, things that we can talk about.
Always looking, and we're having workshops this year for the first time. Those details are going to be coming out here in the next few months. So yeah, really excited about it. And Raleigh's a great town. I always tell folks, North Carolina, we're on the East Coast, so we got a little bit of edge to ourselves, but we're in the South, so we're kind of like the West Coast in California. So maybe it's a good balance for all the folks out there. It's like that middle ground, Yeah,
we're about 3 hours away from you up here in Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. So
nice. Oh, that's not too bad. Virginia Beach area was really pretty too.
That's where we grew up. So that's a good spot. Anyways, big shout out to Greg Walter of Too Tall for connecting us with Mac. Thank you, Greg.
Greg.
Check out his episode if you like as well. But yeah.
Yeah. And we have been talking with Mack Garrison, who is the co-founder and director of content of Dash Studio. You can check out their website at dashstudio.net. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, Mac, where should they go?
Yeah, I would say you can reach out to me directly at Mack and ACK at dashstudio.net. It may take me a minute to get back, but I do my best to reply to everyone that reaches out. And then, of course, if you want to follow me on socials, my Instagram is at adventure_Mac. No digital posts, no animation posts, but you can follow along in my hiking adventures if that interests you. Or you can check me out over on Twitter, which is X now, which is at MackMack_motion. And that is a bit more on the motion-centric side. So, yeah, looking forward to connecting with anyone who's interested in connecting.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Mac, for being on the show. We appreciate you. And until next time, friends, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.